Today, I want to talk about how perspective is very important to proper ventilation. So, if you read Genesis 37, verses 1 through 36, it talks about, I'm going to give you a background, it talks about Joseph and his father Jacob. So now he had many brothers and he has some sisters also. But he was his father's favorite child. So what he did was he gave him a coat with like nice colors and one of like the best coats at that time then. And so people were getting jealous, his brothers were getting jealous, and Joseph kept having these dreams and they was like, you know what you're talking about. And they kept having these dreams like, oh, this is gonna happen, this is gonna happen. They was like, man, this dude need to go somewhere. So, but I'm gonna tell you how our perspective can cause either happiness, or it can cause us to be stressed out, frustrated, or depression or anything like that. It's our perspective. So in verse 20, you know what I'm saying? Here come Joseph again talking to his brothers like, yeah, I had another dream. They're like, man, we don't want to hear this dream. Like they saying that. So he gets down there. So they was like, man, so they had wanted to kill them. In verse 21, Reuben had found out his brother and he was like, nah, let's not kill him. You know what I'm saying? So he wanted to go back and try to tell his father what was happening. So verse 22, they had cast him into the pit, you know what I'm saying? So they put him down there and then some people started to come past. So verse 28, they was like, you know what, let's just sell Joseph. Since we don't want to kill him, let's just sell him, man. And that way that blood won't be in our hands. So some Ishmaelites, I think, was coming past and they sold him for 20 shekels. So that would have been like $200. Like, could you really imagine like your siblings selling you for $200 keeping the money? Can you imagine like Joseph like, nah, like listen, like let me go, like those are my brothers. They like, nah, they said they ain't your brothers, man. I don't know you. Now mind you, at some point you probably look like your brothers, like they probably look like them or something like that. Like that's crazy. But look, he got that big nose like I got right there. He's like, nah, you coming with us. So that's crazy. So verse 29, right? Reuben comes back and he looks in the pit and so Joseph is gone. So he gets upset and tears his clothes. And so what they did was they the brothers, they went and got a billy goat, a little kid goat, and they dipped it in blood, dipped his clothes. So verse 32, they come back to the father. So then they sent the cloak to the tunic of with many colors, and they brought it to their father and said, we found this. That was a lie. Do you know whether it's your son's tunic or not? So right here, I'm gonna pause. So right here, they lied, and all of a sudden they allowed their father to form his own perspective. This is why the scripture says in Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not to your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. This is why God said, lean not to your own understanding. So in verse 33, it says, and he recognized it and said, it is my son's tunic. Now this is with his perspective. He said, a wild beast has devoured him. Without doubt, Joseph is torn to pieces. So his perspective caused him, we're just going to read and go to it. So that was his perspective. Verse 35, and all his sons and all his daughters. So it says verse 34, then his father Jacob tore his clothes and put the sackcloth on his waist and mourned for his son for many days. Verse 35, and all of his sons and all of his daughters arose to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. And he said, for I shall go down into the grave to my son in mourning. Thus his father wept for him. So it was his perspective that caused that. Even though they tried to comfort him, like, well, dang, we didn't know dad was going to feel like this. You know what I'm saying? And they really didn't want that. He refused to be comforted. And so that's sometimes what we get, when something happens, we just like, you know what? I don't want to be comforted because I know what happened. A wild beast tore him. I know that. That was his own perspective. But what did God say? God said, Romans 12 and 2, do not copy the behaviors and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Then you will learn to know God's will for you, which is good, pleasing, and perfect. So what that scripture is really entailing is saying that don't think like what the world would think. You know what I'm saying? Just think like what, what the scripture thinks, because think about it. It says Genesis 50 and 20, what the enemy meant for evil, God will turn for good. So think about it. His perspective, he was like, you know what? It was a wild boar or something that tore my son up and killed him. But his perspective caused him to weep and mourn. Now, look at this. If he would have known that they sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites, if he would have known that, he would have used his money or whatever to go buy them back. I mean, he could have gave him 20 shekels. Like, look, I'll give you 30 shekels to get my son back or whatever like that. So, you know what I'm saying? Just imagine if he would have known really what it was. He wouldn't have been in that state of depression or anything like that. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, he still would have probably been upset or anything like that, but he wouldn't have been mourning like that to the point where he said, you know what, I just don't even want to talk to nobody or whatever like that. I mean, so, you know, we just got to look at, and like I said, our perspective is powerful. Make sure you have somebody, you know, that you can kind of go to, or somebody that can encourage you and just change your perspective, because that's all God is trying to do. He's just trying to change your perspective. A lot of times, you know, when storms come, you know what I'm saying, and situations come, and it's like, man, you know what? And really, it's just your perspective. That's it. Like, his perspective caused him to feel like that. But think about it. If he would have known that, but even though we don't know what would happen if situations happen in our life, we just got to trust God. See, I tell people all the time, the key is not to understand God. The key is to trust God. So just like the scripture says, what the enemy meant for evil, God will turn for good. Romans 8:28, all things work together. Not some things, not many things, all things. So all things work together for good for those who are called according to his blessing, according to his purpose, for those that love him. So that means that if you love God, God is giving you a promise that no matter what, it's going to all work out to your good. So I just want to say that hopefully this will give you some words of encouragement, and it'll just change your perspective. Love y'all. God bless.